because analysis will be an important skill that will be required in most answers, analysis of some sort. What do I mean by analysis? It's a word that's used a lot, and people that aren't always clear, either the people who read or listen or the people sometimes who talk. By analysis I mean the breaking down of a complicated whole into parts and the identification of how the parts fit together. In a book I wrote, I used the example of a clockwork mechanism and how the cogs fit together, and how if you take one of them away the clock won't work, but how they all play a part in the overall mechanism. So to understand the clock you have to see their various cogs and their relationship to each other. If you have done any or some of the suggested ways of working on information in middle stage study, you would have started the process of analysis, identifying the variables, the influences on the situation. And middle stage study is a very good way of developing that aspect of work. The point about analysis is it's you thinking about a period of history. You may start with the analysis of others, but a thoughtful student then will say, well, I think writer X has exaggerated something and writer Y has given too little influence to such and such a person. There you are piggybacking other people's analysis, which is, for a student, I think, a completely acceptable way to start. Because analysis is developing those intellectual skills which are the transferable skills that make history so valuable to employers. So one starts with other people's analysis, and then by thinking about it and modifying it, develops one's own analysis. And this is really useful activity. And because you are mixing your mind with the material, it makes history so much more interesting. It becomes your work on history, your views of the account. That's what gives motivation to students to work so enjoyably, so that they almost cruise to their grade A's or their top grade B's. It's you getting involved with the history which will make it a really rewarding study. And I'm sure most teachers and students really would like their students to move along those lines. It's the sort of thing you're going to do once you've got away from simple cut and paste history, where you just take chunks. It's the sort of thing you would do at GCSE or before. Chunks of history and put it down as an answer and be satisfied with that. It's because you're not taking other people's thoughts, but you're thinking about other people's thoughts and you're making your own thoughts. So after analysis, perhaps it's fairly natural to move on to answer creation and essay writing. I remember when I first came across the word essay, it sounded rather grand and forbidding. I hope it's not true for students these days. It's quite a simple task. It has very defined skills. It has skills which, when defined and understood, can be acquired by anyone. You don't need to have rocket scientist's brain to be a good essay writer. The essence of an essay is understanding the question that has been set, creating an answer to that question, and then writing that answer in a persuasive and clear way. The best way to understand the question is to focus on the key words. And most questions at A level are, in an essay, to be careful of, are things like why did, what was the importance of, how important was. Another good way to make sure that you understand the question is to rephrase it in your own words. Having understood the question, the key is to collect. When you're in an exam, you have to do it from memory. When you're doing coursework, you can do it by looking at your notes. Putting down anything at all that's relevant, that you think is relevant to the question as you have understood it. Having decided, having put down those notes, they're just words to remind you of the content. You then decide if, from your rough working, an overall conclusion can be made from your thought to the question that is asked. Having decided your overall conclusion, you then order what you want to write to make the most effective argument, because in essence, essays look for answers, argument answers. I encourage students to see the essay writer like a lawyer in a court case, presenting a case that so-and-so is guilty because, and those are the arguments. So, having decided an overall conclusion, that will be your introduction, and then each paragraph will be one main point in support of overall conclusion. And each paragraph will have one main theme, and it's best to put that theme at the beginning, so the reader knows exactly where the essay is going, because they've seen the conclusion of the essay writer at the beginning, or the answer rather to the question at the beginning, and then the main points come at the beginning of each of the paragraphs. And the rest of the paragraph, apart from the main point, is the evidence, the supporting, the events that support your stage of the argument. That is essay writing presented, I think, very clearly. And if you've done all your thinking at the beginning when you're preparing the answer, you can put all your emphasis on writing a clear answer, an answer that's persuasive, putting the emphasis on expression. Because if you see essay advocacy, the more clearly you present your case, the more persuasive it is, and the more difficult it will be for any marker to deny you the top grade.